My name is Melanie Brooks, 34, and I never thought I'd have to choose between my critically injured son and homelessness. As Tyler, 7, lay unconscious in the ICU after his accident, my sister Amanda stormed in with her ultimatum, rents tripling to $6,800 or get out by morning. 3 years I'd rented that duplex from her without issues. Now, with medical bills crushing me, she ambushed me during my darkest hour. I didn't argue. I simply reached into my bag and handed her a black envelope. When she opened it, her face went pale. Before I dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about family betrayal and unexpected justice. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Amanda and I were never what you'd call close. Growing up in suburban Boston, we were like night and day. Amanda, the golden child 2 years my senior, and me, the afterthought. At least, that's how it felt. While we shared the same dark hair and blue eyes, that's where our similarities ended. From the beginning, Amanda was our parents' pride and joy. Her ballet recitals, piano concerts, and straight A's dominated family conversations. My parents, Richard and Diane Brooks, never missed her performances, cheering loudly from the front row. My softball games? They'd show up for the last inning, if at all, with my father checking his watch every few minutes. Amanda's just like me. My father would boast to friends and family. She's got that business sense. Meanwhile, my mother would rush to defend her when teachers called about her bossy behavior or when neighborhood parents complained about her entitled attitude. I was the opposite, quiet, artistic, and fiercely independent. By 14, I was babysitting to buy my own art supplies. By 16, I had saved enough from various jobs to buy my first car, a beaten-up Honda that Amanda refused to be seen in. My parents interpreted my self-reliance as aloofness rather than necessity. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the refrain of my childhood. What they failed to see was that Amanda's confidence was built on their constant validation, while mine grew from surviving without it. College marked our first real separation. Amanda attended our father's alma mater, an expensive private university where she majored in business, but spent most of her time socializing. I won a scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design, where I studied graphic design and worked 2 jobs to cover expenses. After graduation, our paths diverged further. I moved to New York, landed a job at a design agency, and built a reputation for myself. Amanda moved back home, worked for our father's company, and lived rent-free while complaining about her entry-level 6-figure salary. Then our parents died, our father from a sudden heart attack and our mother from cancer just 8 months later. Their passing revealed much about their financial situation and, by extension, their priorities. The will was a shock to both of us, but for different reasons. While the family home and most liquid assets went to Amanda, I discovered something unexpected. My father had established a trust for me that could only be accessed when I turned 30. His note explained, "Melanie, you've always been responsible. This is to ensure you have security later in life when you're ready for it." Amanda was furious about the trust, despite receiving significantly more upfront. "Dad always said I'd get everything," she complained during the reading of the will. "This isn't fair." What neither Amanda nor our parents knew was that I had been saving aggressively for years. When my 30th birthday arrived and I gained access to the trust, I didn't need it for day-to-day expenses. Instead, I created an LLC and began looking for investment opportunities, specifically real estate. That's when fate intervened. The property management company handling our parents' rental properties, including the duplex where Amanda now lived in 1 unit, announced they were selling the portfolio. Amanda, who had blown through much of her inheritance on luxury vacations and failed business ventures, couldn't afford to buy them. Through my LLC, Horizon Investments, I purchased the entire portfolio, including the duplex. No one connected me to Horizon. I used my lawyer Benjamin Wright as the public face. Amanda assumed the properties had been sold to some faceless corporation, and I saw no reason to correct her. Why keep it secret? I knew my sister. If she discovered I owned the buildings, she'd expect special treatment. Missed payments would become family favors, and the professional relationship would disintegrate. So I maintained the illusion that she was dealing with a management company, not her sister. Meanwhile, my personal life took several turns. I met Derek Mitchell at a charity gala in Manhattan, tall, charming, and seemingly successful in finance. Our whirlwind romance led to marriage within a year, and Tyler arrived 9 months later. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But Derek's charm masked serious flaws. His successful career was largely fabricated. He moved from job to job, getting fired for poor performance or ethical violations. When Tyler was 3, I discovered Derek had racked up massive gambling debts and had been stealing from our joint accounts. The divorce was ugly but necessary. Derek fought for custody not because he wanted to be a father, but because he knew child support would come from my growing income. When the judge awarded me full custody with Derek granted supervised visitation, he stopped showing up altogether. His last child support payment came 2 years ago, before he disappeared to somewhere in Florida. Through all this, I never told Amanda about my financial situation. When Tyler and I needed a fresh start away from New York and the memories of Derek, I approached Amanda with a proposition. I'd rent the vacant unit in the duplex where she lived, giving her a steady income as my landlord. She agreed eagerly, likely seeing it as another opportunity to lord something over me. The arrangement worked for 3 years. I paid rent on time to the management company, which secretly sent most of it back to me as the owner, while maintaining the property at my own expense under the guise of improvements. Amanda took credit for being a generous landlord whenever I fixed something, never questioning why a tenant would spend their own money on owner responsibilities. All the while, I continued building my remote graphic design business, creating brands for clients nationwide while raising Tyler in the quiet suburb where we'd grown up. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, until it wasn't. As I sat in that hospital room, watching machines breathe for my son, I had no idea that my carefully constructed world was about to collide with Amanda's latest crisis. I should have seen it coming. Amanda's problems had a way of becoming everyone else's emergency. By my 34th birthday, I had established a comfortable routine. My graphic design business had grown enough that I could be selective about clients, working remotely from my home office while Tyler attended the local elementary school. Each morning, I'd walk him to the bus stop at the end of our street, his Spider-Man backpack bouncing as he skipped alongside me, chattering about dinosaurs, space, or whatever his current obsession was. Tyler had my artistic eye and curiosity, but none of my childhood shyness. At 7, he was all boundless energy and imagination, building elaborate Lego structures, creating his own comic books, and making friends wherever he went. His teachers praised his creativity and kindness, traits I'd worked hard to nurture in him. "Mom, do you think I could be an astronaut and an artist?" he'd ask regularly, his big blue eyes serious beneath his mop of brown hair. "You can be anything you put your mind to," I'd always answer, determined that my son would never question his worth or potential the way I had growing up. Co-parenting with Derek was non-existent. After the divorce, his calls became infrequent, then stopped altogether. His child support checks, always late, eventually ceased when he moved to Florida without providing a forwarding address. Tyler occasionally asked about his father, but the questions grew less frequent as time passed. My heart broke watching him scan the fathers at school events, but I poured all my love into being both parents for him. Our life in the duplex was peaceful. My side had 3 bedrooms, one for each of us, and my home office, with a small backyard where Tyler could play. I'd invested in renovating my unit when we moved in, updating the kitchen and bathrooms under the pretense of being an unusually invested tenant. Amanda, living in the attached unit, would occasionally drop by unannounced, usually to brag about a purchase or complain about her latest boyfriend troubles. My closest friend in town was Hannah Reed, a kindergarten teacher I'd reconnected with after moving back. She lived a few blocks away and often joined us for movie nights or helped with Tyler when I had deadlines. Our neighbor, Marcus Sullivan, a widowed retiree, became something of a grandfather figure to Tyler, teaching him about gardening and fixing bicycles. Tuesday, April 14th, began like any other day. I made Tyler chocolate chip pancakes, a weekly tradition, checked his homework, and walked him to the bus stop. Before he boarded, he gave me his usual hug and said, "Love you to Pluto and back, Mom." I watched until the bus turned the corner, never imagining it would be the last normal moment we'd have for months. At 1:42 p.m., my phone rang, the school's number lighting up my screen. My stomach dropped immediately. Schools don't call in the middle of the day with good news. Ms. Brooks. The voice belonged to Principal Davis, tight with controlled urgency. There's been an accident during recess. Tyler fell from the climbing structure. The paramedics are here now. The world tilted sideways. I remember grabbing my keys and purse, not bothering to shut down my computer or lock the front door. I drove to the school on autopilot, hands shaking on the steering wheel, praying to anyone who would listen. When I arrived, an ambulance was already pulling away, sirens blaring. Principal Davis intercepted me in the parking lot. "They're taking him to Boston Children's. He hit his head. He hasn't regained consciousness." The next hours passed in a blur of terror. Following the ambulance to the hospital, the emergency rooms controlled chaos. Doctors asking questions I struggled to answer through my panic. Words like traumatic brain injury, intracranial pressure, and induced coma bounced off me like hail. Dr. Raymond Wells, the pediatric neurologist assigned to Tyler's case, finally provided clarity in the waiting room, his kind eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Tyler has suffered a significant head trauma," he explained gently. "There's swelling in his brain, and we've placed him in a medically induced coma to give his brain time to heal. We'll need to perform surgery to relieve the pressure." "Will he?" I couldn't finish the question. "The next 72 hours are critical," Dr. Wells said, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "Tyler is young and otherwise healthy, which works in his favor. But I want to be honest with you, we're looking at a serious situation." They allowed me to see him before surgery. My vibrant, energetic boy lay still, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped and hissed. His small face was swollen and bruised, nearly unrecognizable. I held his limp hand, making promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "You're going to be okay, baby. Mom's here. I'm not going anywhere." The surgery lasted 4 hours. Hannah arrived halfway through, bringing me coffee and a change of clothes, sitting silently beside me as I stared at the waiting room clock. Marcus called hourly for updates. Even my clients, notified by my hastily set-up email autoresponder, sent messages of support. After surgery, Dr. Wells reported cautious optimism. "We've relieved the pressure successfully. Now we wait and monitor." The ICU became my new home. I slept in a reclining chair beside Tyler's bed, leaving only to shower in the hospital's family room. Days blurred together, marked by nurse shift changes and doctor rounds. The medical bills began arriving even before Tyler stabilized, insurance covering portions but leaving thousands in out-of-pocket expenses that quickly drained my emergency fund. Through it all, Amanda was notably absent. I'd left her a voicemail the night of the accident, but she hadn't responded, not unusual for her when others' crises didn't directly benefit her. I was too focused on Tyler to chase her down. By the 5th day, Tyler's condition had stabilized, but remained critical. He hadn't woken up yet, but the doctors were slowly reducing his sedation, hoping for signs of consciousness. I was talking softly to him, telling him about a squirrel I'd seen on the hospital grounds, when the ICU door swung open. Amanda stood there, designer handbag over her arm, not a hair out of place. After nearly a week of her nephew fighting for his life, she'd finally made an appearance. But something in her expression told me this wasn't a compassionate visit. "We need to talk," she said, barely glancing at Tyler's still form. "About the property." Amanda's timing couldn't have been worse. I'd been awake for nearly 36 hours straight, leaving Tyler's side only for bathroom breaks. My hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and I was wearing the same hospital gift shop sweatpants for the second day. Meanwhile, Amanda looked like she'd stepped out of a business meeting in her tailored blazer and pearl earrings. "Can't this wait?" I asked, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Tyler's condition is still critical." Amanda glanced at my son's unconscious form, her expression softening momentarily. "He looks stable enough." She perched on the edge of the visitor chair, placing her designer bag carefully away from any hospital equipment. "I'm sorry about Tyler, really. Kids are resilient, though. I'm sure he'll bounce back." Her casual dismissal of Tyler's life-threatening condition made my jaw clench, but I'd long ago learned that engaging with Amanda's insensitivity only encouraged it. "What about the property?" I prompted, wanting to get whatever this was over with so I could return my attention to Tyler. Amanda crossed her legs and smoothed her skirt. "Well, there's no easy way to say this, but I'm going to need to raise your rent." She said it with the same tone someone might use to announce a slight change in dinner plans. I stared at her. "Now? You want to discuss rent while Tyler is in intensive care?" "It's unfortunate timing," she conceded with a shrug. "But business is business, Mel." "How much of an increase?" I asked, though something in her demeanor told me I wasn't going to like the answer. Amanda examined her manicure before meeting my eyes. "I'm tripling it. Starting next month, it'll be $6,800. The number hit me like a physical blow. My current rent was $2,200, already slightly above market value, but I'd never complained since I knew where the money ultimately went. $6,800 was completely unreasonable, especially with mounting medical bills. "That's impossible," I said. "You know that's not market rate for the area." "Why would you?" "The market is whatever I say it is," Amanda interrupted. "It's my property, and I need the money. If you can't pay, you need to be out by tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow? That's not legal. Tenant law requires." "I don't care what's legal," she snapped, making air quotes. "I have expenses, Melanie. Major expenses that have come up suddenly." I studied my sister's face, recognizing the tightness around her eyes, the slight twitch in her left cheek, signs I'd seen before when she was in financial trouble. "What did you do this time?" I asked quietly, not wanting to disturb Tyler or alert the nurses to our increasingly tense conversation. Amanda's composure cracked slightly. "Nothing. Well, I made some investments that didn't work out as planned." "Investments? Like your investment in your ex-boyfriend's food truck that disappeared overnight? Or your investment in cryptocurrency that crashed?" Her cheeks flushed with anger. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Little Melanie who always did everything right. Well, not all of us can be so boring and responsible." The conversation was devolving, as it often did with Amanda. I took a deep breath and tried a different approach. "Amanda, even if I wanted to pay that amount, I can't. Look around you." I gestured to the hospital room. "Tyler's medical bills are already in the tens of thousands. Insurance isn't covering everything. I'm barely keeping my head above water." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of empathy in her eyes, but it vanished quickly. "That's not my problem," she said coldly. "I need the money. Either pay up or get out. Your choice." A memory flashed through my mind. Amanda at 10 years old, holding my favorite doll hostage, demanding I give her my dessert for a week if I wanted it back. Something's never changed. What exactly happened? I pressed. "This isn't just about bad investments, is it?" Amanda's facade cracked further. She glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. "Fine. If you must know, I've got some gambling debts. Significant ones. To people who don't take, I need more time for an answer." There it was. Amanda had always had a weakness for casinos, starting with weekend trips to Atlantic City in her 20s. It seemed the occasional indulgence had escalated. "How much do you owe?" I asked. "Enough that I need your rent tripled," she snapped. "The details aren't your business. They are if you're making your problem my problem," I countered. "Especially when it affects my son's stability during a medical crisis." Amanda stood abruptly. "Look, I don't have time to debate this. $6,800 by the 1st of next month, or eviction. Those are your options. I've already listed the unit online in case you decide to be difficult about this." The audacity was breathtaking, even for Amanda. As she paced the small hospital room, I thought about all the times throughout our lives when her problems had become everyone else's emergency. The family vacation canceled because Amanda failed 3 classes and needed summer tutoring. My college graduation party becoming a celebration of Amanda's new job instead. My parents missing Tyler's birth because Amanda had a breakup and needed them more. Always, I had been expected to understand, to accommodate, to put my needs last. It was the unspoken family rule. Amanda's crises trumped everything. As I watched her check her reflection in the window of Tyler's hospital room, adjusting her hair while my son fought for his life, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of patience and understanding hardened into resolve. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Your gambling debts are more important than your nephew's recovery? Than your sister having a stable home during a family emergency?" Amanda had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but only for a moment. "Don't be so dramatic. Tyler will recover and you'll figure something out." "You always do." She picked up her bag and headed for the door. "I need an answer by tomorrow. $6,800 or you're out." As she reached for the door handle, I made a decision. For years, I'd protected Amanda from consequences. I'd maintained our charade to spare her pride and preserve what little relationship we had. But watching her walk away from Tyler's bedside with nothing but financial demands and not a shred of genuine concern, I realized the time for protection was over. "Wait," I said quietly. Amanda turned, impatience written across her face. "What?" "I have something for you." I reached into my worn leather tote bag beside Tyler's hospital bed, the same bag that had been sitting there untouched for days, containing essentials I'd hastily grabbed when the school called. Beneath my wallet, phone charger, and a half-eaten granola bar was a sleek black envelope I always kept with me, not out of expectation, but preparation. Amanda watched with narrowed eyes as I pulled out the envelope, her foot tapping impatiently on the linoleum floor. "If this is a check, it better be for the full amount," she said, extending her hand. I didn't immediately give her the envelope. Instead, I looked at Tyler, tubes running from his small body, the rhythmic beep of monitors the only sound indicating life. Then I looked back at my sister, seeing not just the entitled woman before me, but the little girl who had once been my playmate before our parents' differential treatment drove us apart. "You know," I said softly, "I've spent my entire life trying to understand you, Amanda. Making excuses for your behavior. Shouldering the burden of our relationship. Even now, with Tyler fighting for his life, I'm still doing emotional labor for you." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Spare me the therapy talk and give me your answer. Are you paying or leaving?" I stood up slowly, my body stiff from days in the hospital chair. Even standing, I felt small next to Amanda in her heels, but for once, I didn't feel diminished by the difference. "Here's my answer," I said, handing her the black envelope. Amanda snatched it, likely expecting a bank check. Her French manicured nails broke the seal, and she pulled out the contents, several legal documents with official seals and signatures. "What is this?" she asked, confusion replacing her smugness. "Property deeds," I replied calmly. "And ownership records." Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened. She flipped to the next document, her movements becoming increasingly frantic. "This says, This says Horizon Investments owns the duplex and the other properties, but that's not possible. The management company told me. Horizon Investments is my company, I said quietly. I've owned the entire portfolio of properties for 5 years, including the duplex where you live, where we both live. The color drained from Amanda's face. She looked at the documents again, as if hoping the words would rearrange themselves. You can't. Dad left those properties to be managed by. Dad left you liquid assets and me a trust, I corrected gently. When the management company decided to sell the portfolio, you couldn't afford to buy it. But I could, through my LLC. Amanda sank into the visitor's chair, the papers trembling in her hands. So, all this time, when I thought I was your landlord, you were actually my tenant, I confirmed. I kept up the arrangement because it seemed to make you happy, thinking you had some power over me. And honestly, it was simpler than dealing with the fallout of you knowing the truth. The rent payments went to the management company, which took their fee and passed the rest to Horizon Investments, to me. I essentially paid rent to myself while maintaining the illusion that you were in charge. Amanda's shock was giving way to anger, her cheeks flushing red. This is a trick. You're lying. Call Benjamin Wright, I suggested, naming my attorney. His number is on the documents. He handles all Horizon's legal matters. He'll confirm everything. As the reality sank in, Amanda's expression cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, fear. So what now? She asked, her voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. Are you going to evict me? Is this your revenge? I shook my head. No, Amanda. I'm not you. I don't use housing as a weapon against family members. Before Amanda could respond, the door opened and Natalie Simmons, Tyler's night nurse, entered. She glanced between us, immediately sensing the tension. Everything okay in here? She asked, her experienced eyes taking in Amanda's distress and my exhaustion. We're just finishing a family discussion, I assured her. Well, I need to check Tyler's vitals and change his Natalie said firmly. Maybe you could continue your conversation outside? Amanda stood abruptly, still clutching the documents. We're done here anyway. She moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back. This isn't over, Melanie. Actually, it is, I replied evenly. You have until the end of the month to decide if you want to stay as my tenant, paying the fair market rate of $2,200 or find somewhere else to live. Your choice. As Amanda stormed out, the door swinging shut behind her, Natalie raised an eyebrow. Family, I said by way of explanation. She hummed knowingly as she checked Tyler's monitors. Family can be the biggest blessing and the biggest challenge all at once. I sat back down beside Tyler, taking his small hand in mine. The confrontation had left me drained, but also strangely liberated. For the first time in our adult lives, Amanda and I saw each other clearly, without the distortion of our childhood roles. As Natalie worked efficiently around us, I leaned close to Tyler's ear and whispered, "It's just you and me against the world, buddy. And we're stronger than anyone knows." I had no idea then that our strength would be tested even further before the night was through. The calm after Amanda's dramatic exit lasted exactly 43 minutes. I was dozing in the chair beside Tyler's bed, my hand still resting on his, when the monitors suddenly erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Tyler's body went rigid, then began to convulse. "Seizure," Natalie shouted, hitting the emergency call button while simultaneously lowering Tyler's bed to a flat position. The room flooded with medical personnel. Someone gently but firmly pulled me away from the bed as the team worked on my son. Dr. Wells arrived moments later, barking orders as he assessed Tyler. "BP's dropping," one nurse called out. O2 sat down to 82, another reported. "We need to intubate now," Dr. Wells decided. "Get OR3 ready. We're going back in." I stood pressed against the wall, hands covering my mouth, watching helplessly as they prepared to rush Tyler back to surgery. As they unlocked the bed's wheels, Dr. Wells approached me. The intracranial pressure has increased suddenly, he explained, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. We need to operate immediately to relieve it. But he was stable, I whispered. You said he was stable. With brain injuries, conditions can change rapidly, he said, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. I need your consent for emergency surgery. I signed the forms without fully seeing them, my vision blurred by tears. As they wheeled Tyler away, Dr. Wells paused. We'll do everything we can, he promised before following the team down the hall. Left alone in the suddenly quiet room, I collapsed into the chair, my legs no longer able to support me. The beeping machines, the rumpled sheets, evidence of Tyler's presence, but no Tyler. The absence was deafening. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen in shock, before Hannah burst in, still wearing her classroom clothes, concern etched across her face. I came as soon as I got your text, she said, though I had no memory of texting her. I must have done it on autopilot while signing the consent forms. When I didn't respond, Hannah knelt before me, taking my ice-cold hands in hers. Melanie? What happened? They took him back to surgery, I managed, my voice distant to my own ears. His brain, the pressure, he was seizing. Hannah wrapped her arms around me, and something broke. The dam of composure I'd maintained for days, through the accident, the first surgery, the endless waiting, even through Amanda's cruel ultimatum, finally crumbled. I sobbed into Hannah's shoulder, raw, guttural cries that seemed to come from somewhere beyond myself. He can't die, I gasped between sobs. He's all I have. He's everything. He's not going to die, Hannah said firmly, though we both knew she had no power to make such promises. He's a fighter, just like his mom. Time lost all meaning in that waiting room. Hannah got me to the surgical floor, where we sat side by side on uncomfortable plastic chairs. She brought me water I couldn't drink and food I couldn't eat. The clock on the wall seemed to move at half speed, each minute stretching into eternity. 3 hours into the wait, I caught a glimpse of Amanda in the hospital lobby through the waiting room's glass doors. She was speaking with a man in a suit, her latest lawyer, I assumed. When she saw me watching, she quickly turned away, heading for the exit. Even now, with Tyler fighting for his life, her priorities were clear. A strange calm settled over me then. If Tyler survived, when Tyler survived, things would be different. No more accommodating toxic relationships. No more prioritizing peace over health. No more allowing Tyler to believe that the way Amanda treated us was normal or acceptable. Dr. Wells finally emerged after 4.5 hours, still in his surgical scrubs, looking exhausted but not defeated. A distinction I'd learned to recognize in the faces of medical professionals. We've managed to reduce the pressure, he said, sitting beside me. We had to remove a small portion of skull to allow room for the swelling. It sounds dramatic, but it's a standard procedure for this situation. And I pressed, needing the bottom line. And he's stable, Dr. Wells continued. More stable than before. The next 48 hours will be critical. We'll keep him in a medically induced coma to give his brain maximum chance to heal. But he'll wake up? Eventually. I couldn't stop myself from asking the question that had haunted me since the first surgery. Dr. Wells didn't offer false comfort. Brain injuries are unpredictable. Some patients recover fully, others partially. Some have lasting effects. It's too soon to know where on that spectrum Tyler will fall. I nodded, appreciating his honesty even as it terrified me. Can I see him? I asked. He's in recovery now. Once he's settled back in ICU, the nurse will come get you. When Dr. Wells left, Hannah insisted I eat something. She guided me to the cafeteria and placed a sandwich and apple juice in front of me. I managed a few mechanical bites, tasting nothing. You need to keep your strength up, she reminded me gently. Tyler's going to need you at full capacity when he wakes up. When, not if. The word choice wasn't lost on me. Back in the ICU waiting room, Hannah finally addressed what she'd obviously been wondering. I saw Amanda leaving earlier. Did she actually come to support you? I gave a hollow laugh. Not exactly. I filled her in on Amanda's ultimatum and my revelation about the property ownership. Hannah's eyes widened. You've owned the duplex this entire time? And she never knew. I kept it quiet for simplicity's sake, I explained. But threatening to triple the rent while Tyler's fighting for his life, that crossed a line I can't uncross. What will you do now? Before I could answer, Natalie appeared. You can see him now. Tyler had been moved to a different ICU room with even more machines surrounding him. His head was wrapped in fresh bandages, his face pale against the white sheets. Despite Dr. Wells' warning about the skull removal, the sight of my son's misshapen head beneath the bandages made my knees buckle. Natalie quickly guided me to the chair beside his bed. The swelling makes it look worse than it is, she assured me. Once the swelling reduces, you'll hardly notice. I reached for Tyler's hand, careful not to disturb the foreline. Hey, Ty Guy, I whispered, using my special nickname for him. Mom's here. I'm not going anywhere. Hannah stayed through the night, sleeping awkwardly in the recliner by the window while I maintained my vigil at Tyler's bedside. Every hour, nurses came to check his vitals and pupil response. Each time, I held my breath until they nodded in satisfaction. Dawn was breaking when Tyler's fingers twitched in mine, the smallest movement, so slight I thought I might have imagined it. But then it happened again, a definite pressure against my palm. Tyler, I whispered, leaning closer. Can you hear me, baby? No response, but the hand movement was unmistakable. I pressed the call button and Natalie appeared within seconds. His hand moved, I told her, trying to contain my excitement. He squeezed my hand. Twice. Natalie checked his monitors, then shined a light in each of his eyes, watching carefully for pupillary response. Good reflexes, she noted, a small smile forming. Dr. Wells will want to know this. It's a positive sign. What does it mean? I asked, hope fighting to break through my exhaustion. It means his brain is still in there, fighting, she said. And that's exactly what we want to see. As the morning shift arrived and the hospital began stirring to life, I felt something I hadn't experienced since the accident. A tiny spark of optimism, fragile but persistent, like the first green shoot after a devastating forest fire. Tyler had a long road ahead, but he was still with me. Still fighting. And for now, that was enough. The 48 critical hours drive Wells mentioned passed in a haze of monitoring, medication adjustments, and cautious optimism. Tyler's brain pressure remained stable, his vital signs strengthened, and by the third day after his second surgery, the medical team began slowly reducing his sedation. We'll bring him out of the coma gradually, Dr. Wells explained during morning rounds. It's not like in movies where patients just wake up suddenly. It's a process that can take days. I'd taken up permanent residence in Tyler's room, leaving only when absolutely necessary. Hannah brought fresh clothes and took my laundry home to wash. Marcus stopped by with homemade soup in thermoses and updates about the neighborhood. My clients had been understanding, with many insisting I take paid leave rather than trying to work remotely from the hospital. What I hadn't seen was Amanda. After our confrontation, she'd gone completely silent. No calls, no texts, not even messages relayed through mutual acquaintances. Part of me was relieved, another part worried what she might be planning. On day 5 post-second surgery, as I was helping the nurse turn Tyler to prevent bed sores, my phone buzzed with repeated text notifications. When I finally checked, I found 17 messages from Amanda, ranging from angry accusations to tearful apologies to practical questions about the property situation. The final text read, "We need to talk. In person. Today." I showed the messages to Hannah, who had arrived with lunch. "You don't owe her a response right now," Hannah pointed out. "Your focus is Tyler." I know, I sighed. But leaving things unresolved with Amanda will just create more drama later. And honestly, I'd rather deal with it now, while Tyler's still sedated, than when he's more aware. I texted Amanda back, telling her she could come to the hospital at 3 p.m. when Tyler would be undergoing tests, giving us 30 minutes to talk privately. While waiting for Amanda, I called Benjamin Wright, my attorney, to get legal clarity on the situation. "You're well within your rights to evict her, given the circumstances," Benjamin advised after I explained what had happened. "But there's a formal process we'd need to follow." "I don't necessarily want to evict her," I admitted. "I just want her to understand the reality of our situation and behave accordingly. In that case, I'd recommend drafting a formal lease agreement, something we should have done years ago. It would clearly outline expectations, rent amount, and consequences for violations." "Could you prepare something like that?" "Just so I have it as an option when I speak with her." "Of course. I'll email it over within the hour." By the time Amanda arrived, I felt prepared, if not entirely emotionally ready. We met in the hospital's small family consultation room, a space designed for difficult conversations, with its muted colors and box of tissues prominently placed on the central table. Amanda looked different, subdued, with minimal makeup and casual clothes instead of her usual polished appearance. She sat across from me, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "How's Tyler?" she asked, surprising me by leading with concern for him. "Stable," I replied cautiously. "They're bringing him out of sedation gradually. The doctors are cautiously optimistic." She nodded, genuinely seeming relieved. "Good. That's really good." An awkward silence fell between us. For once, I didn't rush to fill it, waiting instead for Amanda to state her purpose. "I verified everything," she finally said. "About the properties?" "I spoke with Benjamin Wright." "You really do own them all?" "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" There was hurt in her voice now, alongside the indignation. "All these years, letting me believe I was in charge, when really you were, what? Laughing at me behind my back?" "I wasn't laughing, Amanda. I was avoiding exactly this kind of drama. If you'd known I owned the building, would you have respected the landlord-tenant boundaries? Or would you have expected special treatment, late payment forgiveness, free upgrades?" Her silence was answer enough. "And clearly," I continued, "I was right to be concerned, given that your first instinct when facing financial trouble was to extort your sister while her child was in intensive care." Amanda flinched at my characterization but didn't deny it. "I was desperate," she said quietly. "The people I owe money to, they're not patient." "Loan sharks?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Amanda, that's not loan sharks," she interrupted. "Just private lenders who don't ask too many questions. The interest adds up quickly." I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting a stress headache. "How much do you owe?" "About 40,000, she admitted, staring at her hands. The amount was substantial, but not catastrophic, certainly not worth destroying our relationship or threatening her nephew's stability. "Why didn't you just ask for help?" I asked. Directly, honestly? Amanda gave a bitter laugh. "Ask my little sister for a handout? The sister who always did everything right, who has the successful career and the perfect kid and apparently a real estate empire. No thanks." The old Amanda was resurfacing, defensive, prideful, unable to admit vulnerability without wrapping it in barbs. "Pride is expensive," I observed. "It nearly cost you your housing and what's left of our relationship." She looked away, blinking rapidly. "So what happens now? Are you evicting me?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the documents Benjamin had emailed over, which I'd printed at the nurse's station. "This is a formal lease agreement," I explained, sliding it across the table. 1-year term, $2,200 monthly rent, the fair market rate, due on the 1st of each month. Late fees apply after the 5th. No special exceptions or family discounts, but also no arbitrary increases. Amanda flipped through the pages, surprise evident on her face. "You're still willing to rent to me? After everything? You're Tyler's aunt. Despite our differences, you're family. I don't want to disrupt your housing situation if we can find a way forward that works for everyone," She studied me, suspicion giving way to cautious relief. What's the catch? No catch. Just boundaries. This is a business arrangement, not an emotional one. You pay rent on time, respect the property, and we maintain a professional landlord-tenant relationship. And my debt situation? I'd given this considerable thought. I'm not paying it off for you. That would just enable more of the same behavior. But I do have a proposal. I outlined my offer. I would loan her the money to pay off her high-interest debts, but she would repay me through a structured payment plan with reasonable interest, secured by a legal agreement. Additionally, she would need to attend financial counseling and gambling addiction support groups. That's actually fair, Amanda admitted after hearing the terms. More than fair, considering what I did. It's not about punishment, Amanda. It's about breaking destructive patterns. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Tyler opened his eyes during reflex tests. Doctor says come now. I stood abruptly. I have to go. Tyler's showing signs of consciousness. Amanda stood too, uncertainty on her face. Can I? Would it be okay if I came too? To see him? The request surprised me. In all the days since the accident, Amanda had shown minimal interest in Tyler's condition. But the vulnerability in her expression seemed genuine. All right, I agreed. But if it's too much for him, or if the medical team objects, you'll need to leave immediately. We hurried back to the ICU, where Dr. Wells and 2 nurses were gathered around Tyler's bed. As we entered, I saw what had prompted the urgent message. Tyler's eyes were indeed open, though unfocused, blinking slowly against the room's light. Tyler, Dr. Wells was saying. Can you hear me? Blink twice if you can hear me. We all held our breath. One slow blink, then another. Good, Dr. Wells said encouragingly. Your mom is here. Can you look toward her? I moved to the side of the bed opposite the doctor, Amanda hanging back by the door. Tyler's eyes drifted in my direction, struggling to focus. Hi, baby, I said, my voice breaking. It's Mom. I'm right here. For a moment, there was no recognition in his gaze. Then his lips moved slightly, forming what might have been an attempt at Mom, though no sound emerged around the breathing tube. Don't try to talk, Dr. Wells instructed gently. You have a tube helping you breathe. Just rest. The connection lasted only seconds before Tyler's eyes drifted closed again, but it was enough to send tears streaming down my face. This is excellent progress, Dr. Wells assured me. The fact that he's responsive, recognizes you, and attempted communication are all positive signs. I nodded, too overcome for words. When I finally looked up, I saw Amanda watching from the doorway, her own eyes wet with tears. Over the next week, Tyler's improvement continued steadily. The breathing tube was removed, replaced with a nasal cannula. He began speaking in short sentences, recognizing familiar faces, and even watching brief cartoons on the tablet Hannah brought from home. The portion of skull they'd removed would need to be replaced in a future surgery, but for now, a special helmet protected the vulnerable area when he was awake. Through it all, Amanda became a more regular presence. She didn't stay long during visits, clearly uncomfortable in hospital settings, but she came every other day, bringing small gifts, a new stuffed dinosaur, comic books, a space-themed nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling. Aunt Amanda brought you something cool today, I told Tyler during one such visit, 2 weeks after his second surgery. He was sitting up in bed, still weak but increasingly alert. Is it another dinosaur? He asked, his speech slightly slower than before but improving daily. Amanda laughed, pulling a small package from her bag. Not this time, buddy. It's a model rocket kit we can build together when you're feeling better. Tyler's face lit up. Awesome. I love rockets. I remember, Amanda said softly, and I realized she actually did remember. She'd heard him talking about space during one of her rare visits to our home months ago. It was a small thing, but the fact that she'd paid attention enough to recall his interest touched me unexpectedly. Later, as I walked Amanda to the elevator, she paused before pressing the call button. "I signed the lease," she said, pulling the folded document from her purse. "And I've looked into those financial counseling sessions you mentioned." "That's good," I replied, genuinely pleased by her initiative. "I also wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Not just about the rent thing. About everything. The way I've treated you and Tyler over the years." She stared at the floor, uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I've always been jealous of you, you know." "Jealous? Of me?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "But you were always the favorite, the one who got everything." "I got things," she corrected. "You got strength, independence, real connections with people who actually care about you, not just what you can do for them." She gestured back toward Tyler's room. "A son who lights up when you walk into the room. Do you know how valuable that is?" Before I could respond, the elevator arrived. Amanda stepped inside, then held the door open for a moment longer. "I'm trying to be better," she said simply. "It's harder than I thought it would be." As the doors closed between us, I realized that for the first time in our adult lives, my sister and I might be moving toward an authentic relationship, not the perfect sisterhood of childhood dreams, but something real, with boundaries and respect on both sides. The road ahead would be challenging, for Tyler's recovery and for our family's healing. But for the first time, I felt hopeful that we all might emerge stronger from this crisis than we'd been before. 3 months after Tyler's accident, we finally came home. The homecoming was nothing like I had imagined during those early, terrifying days in the ICU. I had pictured carrying my weak, barely conscious son into the house, setting up a hospital bed in the living room, and essentially creating a home nursing unit. Instead, Tyler walked through our front door on his own 2 feet, his space-themed helmet protecting the still healing area of his skull, a wide smile lighting up his face as he saw the "Welcome Home Tyler" banner Hannah and Marcus had hung across the living room. "My Legos," he exclaimed, spotting his beloved collection exactly as he'd left it the morning of the accident. "Mom, can I build something?" "After you rest a bit," I compromised, knowing his energy levels still fluctuated dramatically. "And remember what Dr. Wells said about taking breaks." Tyler's recovery had been remarkable but not without challenges. The neurological team had been honest with me about what to expect. While he'd regained most motor functions and his personality remained intact, he struggled with short-term memory, became frustrated easily, and tired quickly. There would be months of outpatient therapy ahead, and the protective helmet would stay until his skull replacement surgery in another 3 months. But he was alive. He was home. And he was still my Tyler, perhaps a bit different, but his curiosity, kindness, and imagination remained undimmed by the trauma his young brain had endured. As Tyler settled onto the couch with a dinosaur documentary, his current obsession having expanded to include paleontology, I unpacked the hospital bags we'd lived out of for 92 days. Hannah had cleaned the house thoroughly before our arrival, even putting fresh flowers on the kitchen table. A knock at the door revealed Marcus, holding a homemade lasagna. "Figured cooking was the last thing you needed to worry about tonight," he said, the corners of his eyes crinkling with his gentle smile. "You're a lifesaver," I told him, accepting the dish gratefully. "Want to come in? Tyler would love to see you." The evening turned into an impromptu welcome home gathering as Hannah arrived after school with cupcakes, and even Benjamin stopped by with a gift card for a meal delivery service. Through it all, Tyler soaked up the attention, showing off his new medical knowledge. Did you know the human brain feels like Jell-O? And collecting promises of future outings once he'd regained more strength. Notably absent was Amanda, though she'd texted earlier, "Hope homecoming goes well. Stopping by tomorrow instead. Don't want to overwhelm T on first day back." The consideration surprised me, one of many small shifts I'd observed in my sister over the past months. She'd been keeping to our new landlord-tenant agreement scrupulously, paying rent on time, and even helping with some duplex maintenance, without being asked. Our conversations remained somewhat stilted, decades of dysfunction not erased by a single crisis, but the effort on both sides was genuine. After everyone left and Tyler was tucked into his own bed for the first time in months, surrounded by his favorite stuffed animals, night light projecting stars on his ceiling, I finally allowed myself to truly exhale. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, I pulled out the journal I'd started keeping during Tyler's hospitalization, turning to a fresh page to record this milestone day. The next morning, I woke to find Tyler already up, carefully arranging his Lego pieces on the living room floor. "Hey, buddy," I said, kneeling beside him. "You should have woken me if you needed help." "I didn't need help," he replied, concentration evident as he connected two difficult pieces. "And you were sleeping so good." His small act of consideration brought a lump to my throat. Throughout his recovery, Tyler had shown remarkable empathy, often asking how I was feeling or insisting I take breaks from his bedside. The ordeal had matured him in ways both heartbreaking and beautiful to witness. Our new routine quickly established itself. Mornings for medication, breakfast, and light activities. Afternoons for therapy appointments, physical therapy on Mondays and Wednesdays, cognitive therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, with Fridays reserved for rest. I had arranged to continue working remotely indefinitely, my clients understanding and supportive of our situation. Amanda arrived as promised the day after our homecoming, bearing a gift bag containing a model solar system that could hang from Tyler's ceiling. "This is awesome," Tyler exclaimed, examining the detailed planets. "Mom, can we hang it today? Please?" "We'll need to get the right hooks," I explained. "Maybe Aunt Amanda can help us install it this weekend?" Amanda looked startled by the invitation, but quickly nodded. "I'd like that." After Tyler went to rest in his room, still tiring easily from social interactions, Amanda and I sat at the kitchen table, an echo of many uncomfortable conversations throughout our lives. "The place looks good," she said, glancing around. "Unchanged, I mean. Like you never left." "Thanks to Hannah and Marcus," I acknowledged. "They kept everything ready for us." Amanda nodded, a flicker of something like envy crossing her face. "You have good friends." "I do," I agreed, deciding to extend an olive branch. "And family, too. You've been different since everything happened." "In a good way." Amanda traced a pattern on the table with her fingertip, avoiding eye contact. "The financial counseling has helped. And the other group, the gambling one. I didn't want to go at first, but it's been illuminating." "I'm glad." "I sold my designer bags," she continued, still not looking up. "And some jewelry. Paid off about half of what I owe you already." This genuinely surprised me. Amanda's designer collection had been her pride and joy, often purchased at the expense of more practical needs. Wow, Amanda. That's a big step." She shrugged, finally meeting my gaze. "They're just things." When I saw Tyler in that hospital bed, it changed something. Made me realize how stupid it all was, caring so much about stuff and status. Before I could respond, Tyler called from his room, needing help with his medication. By the time I returned, Amanda had composed herself, the moment of vulnerability past, but not forgotten. The weekend brought another milestone, our first family dinner since Tyler's return home. Amanda arrived punctually, helping me prepare a simple meal while Tyler supervised from his perch at the kitchen counter, offering expert advice on pasta sauce seasoning. As we sat down to eat, I was struck by how ordinary yet extraordinary the moment felt. My son, alive and improving daily. My sister, making genuine efforts at change. Myself, stronger and more certain of my boundaries than I'd ever been. "I'm going back to school when I'm better," Tyler announced between bites of garlic bread. "And I'm going to be a doctor. Or maybe an astronaut doctor. For space emergencies." Amanda smiled. "That sounds perfect for you, buddy. You've certainly had enough medical experience to get a head start." Dr. Wells says my brain is super interesting, Tyler informed her proudly. He's going to write a paper about it for Dr. School. Medical journal, I corrected gently. And yes, your recovery has been very impressive. The doctors have learned a lot from you. As Tyler launched into a detailed explanation of his upcoming skull replacement surgery, complete with sound effects that made Amanda wince, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. Not just for Tyler's survival and recovery, but for the unexpected gifts that had emerged from our crisis, a new understanding with my sister, a deeper appreciation for my support network, and an unshakable confidence in my own strength. 6 months after the accident, life had found a new normal. Tyler returned to school part-time, his skull successfully reconstructed, though he still attended therapy sessions and tired more easily than before. His teachers developed a modified curriculum to accommodate his needs while challenging his sharp mind. Amanda and I had settled into a relationship that, while not perfect, was more honest than ever before. She paid her rent on time, attended her support groups, and had even started taking classes at the community college, small steps toward greater independence and responsibility. As for me, I found myself changed in ways both subtle and profound. I no longer avoided confrontation at all costs, having learned that boundaries were not just important, but essential. I spoke more directly, made decisions more confidently, and valued my own judgment in ways I never had before. One evening, as Tyler and I sat on our back porch watching the sunset, a ritual we'd developed since his recovery, he asked a question that caught me off guard. Mom, are you glad about what happened? Not the accident part, but the other stuff. What do you mean, buddy? He furrowed his brow, searching for the right words, something he still sometimes struggled with. Like with Aunt Amanda. And you being braver now. His perception startled me. How do you know I'm braver? Tyler shrugged. You talk different. Stand taller. Don't let people make you sad anymore. He paused, then added with the simple wisdom of childhood, you know who you are now. I pulled him close, this remarkable child who had been through so much and still saw the world with such clarity. You're right, I admitted. Sometimes the hardest moments teach us the most important lessons. I'm not glad about what happened to you. I would take away your pain in a heartbeat if I could. But I am grateful for what we've learned, for how we've grown stronger together. Tyler nodded seriously. Like my doctor said, we adapt and overcome. Exactly like that, I agreed, watching as the last rays of sunlight gilded his profile. The journey hadn't been one I would have chosen. The terror of nearly losing my child, the betrayal by my sister, the months of uncertainty and recovery. But through it all, I had discovered truths I might never have learned otherwise, that I was stronger than I knew, that boundaries were acts of love rather than selfishness, and that sometimes the most painful crises led to the most profound healing. As Tyler began pointing out the first evening stars appearing in the darkening sky, naming constellations he'd memorized during long hospital nights, I made a silent promise to myself and to him to carry these lessons forward, to continue building a life where authenticity and self-respect were foundations rather than aspirations. Our story wasn't over. In many ways, it felt like we were just beginning a new chapter. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger for having weathered the storm. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who took advantage of your kindness? Or experienced a crisis that ultimately led to positive change? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that strength often emerges from our most difficult moments. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and remember, sometimes the most powerful words we can learn to say are simply enough.